In the hills of West Virginia, there's a school I love to talk about, and they like to say, "We are Marshall." And this year, this Marshall team starting over again with a brand new coach. We'll find out how much he has to rebuild and where their position is in the pecking order over in the Sun Belt. Next on the College Huddle. And joining me live here on the College Huddle this evening, we have Russ and KD, my men, my guys, the Thundercast, baby. Welcome back into the College Huddle studios, my friends. You guys do so great. Your work over there is some of the best in G5. I love it. You guys have a great time. You love what you do. You can tell. It comes through on the screen when you watch, when you listen to it. And you guys are a must listen to. Great to have you guys back with us. Russ, KD, welcome in.
Thanks, man. Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you, Eric. We love being part of the College Huddle and appreciate what you said about our show. We try to be genuine and authentic. Sometimes I do let my emotions get the best of me, and I forget that there's a camera and a microphone. I always feel like I'm just talking to Russ, but at the end of the day, I kind of think that's what people love most about what we do. So appreciate you having us.
Yeah, KD in the early running for a mustache of the year here at the College Huddle. So showing that bad Earnhardt baby off right there.
Hey man, if we're gonna hand out national championships, I'm gonna put the Herd in the running for one right out of the gate. So I'll take mustache of the year nomination. Let's do that.
Let's do it. Let's do that. All right, guys, let's jump right into this thing, man. Okay, I'm gonna go back to late November. Into December. Of course, we got to collaborate last year together. Had a great time with that. Super impressed with the Marshall fan base, everybody who I met in Columbus, Ohio, and kind of fell in love with you guys' program. Now, I've always been tangentially kind of a follower of Marshall. You guys have always had a entertaining teams, big time stars who have made their names known in the NFL have come through Marshall. There's an amazing movie with Matthew McConaughey about your program, albeit from a tragedy standpoint, but yet still a wonderful story. I'm personally connected to that story. My father played football with one of the players who passed away in that plane accident. So always had just a huge interest in the Marshall program. And then to get the news that the head football coach, who I liked, by the way, who had a fantastic quote about Tudor's biscuits, by the way, in NIL, decided to just up and leave. And in doing so, KD, as Russ fixes his view there, no problem.
Sorry.
No, we're all good. He ups and leaves. And like half the roster goes with them, and then you can't even go to the bowl game, man. Let's start there. The fan base, the administration, everything. Give me the lowdown, because I think this year's story really begins at that point. If I could be as bold as to say so. It's your floor, guys.
Well, yeah. We can start there. Sure. It was the fan base was split immediately, right? When you're thinking, okay, we're going to a bowl game, we're going to go to the Independence Bowl, and then not that long after, it's like we can't field enough guys to safely play the game, and some people just thought that was BS. You should go anyway, but come on. You can't really, if you can't play safely, then you shouldn't go. And it's an unfortunate scenario that Marshall is, again, perhaps maybe the first in many teams that have to do this year over year in this portal era. Let's hope not. But it's a bad place to be because it was a bad look. You know, we wanted to play the game. The guys we thought were up. The ones that were staying anyway definitely wanted to play that game, and it just didn't happen. So it was what I continually call an ugly breakup, you know, between the program and the head coach and the portal and all that stuff. And, you know, Russ will talk about that a little bit in more detail. He tends to have some, I won't say better information, but he has explained it so much better on other shows when we've been asked about it that I just kind of yield to him to discuss that whole scenario. But right out of the gate, if that's where you're going to start, it was great. You win a conference championship and you're hoisting a trophy, and then within what seems like moments, I mean, it was days or a week or so, a couple weeks, you go from hoisting a trophy to having to opt out of a bowl game, which was a great look to a horrible look. And then, what became of the offseason, which was, again, a huge turnaround and a big boost in positivity with the Herd fan base. So, Russ, I mean, what can you say about the end of the year that better articulates what I'm trying to get across?
Well, so just for anyone that has not done anything more than a cursory headline reading and think that they know the story, it was a contract year for Coach Huff. He didn't have a contract, so from his perspective, he's got to look and see where he wants to be. Where's he going to go? And if he doesn't have a contract offer for an extension, the writing's on the wall. He's not going to be here any longer. So from his perspective, that's what he's looking at. From a university perspective, we wanted him to entertain a possibility of at least do a contract talk. And what was reported was he said, let's talk about it after the season. They said, okay, if we're going to do that, every single year you've been here, you've interviewed even mid-season, your first year here, your second year here, your third year here, you've interviewed with other teams. So if we're going to table contract extension talks until after the season, will you not interview with anyone else? And he said, sure. And then he interviewed like 2 weeks left in the season with Southern Miss. So at that point, they were just like, okay, well, we're not extending the contract. Whatever happens, happens. We end up getting in the conference championship game. We win the conference championship game. His contract ended that night because that was, technically they run through June 30. All contracts do. But that was his last contractual thing, was that game. So the very next day is when he went to Southern Miss, because basically we were like, okay, we're moving forward with a different coach. We already knew that that wasn't going to be our coach coming into the next year. And it's unfortunate that the two sides didn't come to any kind of thing, but it's a contractual disagreement. It wasn't like he up and said, hey, I've got this great offer from Marshall, but I'm going to take this offer from a conference rival instead. It's a better offer. It wasn't. We're paying Tony Gibson more this year than what Coach Huff is making down at Southern Miss. It was not any kind of I chose them over them. He did not have a job opportunity moving forward. Even before the conference championship game, we knew, because he had broken that promise, that he was not going to be here the next year. And I'm not saying every fan base or everyone in the fan base knew. I'm saying Marshall University knew that had happened. We were actually given rock solid information that at the time that it was reported that he had taken the interview, that interview had not taken place. So it was either shortly after that, or we were given wrong information from a trusted, solid source. But it was one of these things, like KD said, it's an ugly breakup. Of course, neither side is going to be able to divulge 100% of the information. You know how things like that are.
Sure.
So what happens is fans and pundits, and you don't have to be a journalist anymore to get it out on social media. You can do kind of like what we do. We're not 40-year members of the press, but we can sure put out stories. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that put out some stories that just were not informed of what happened. And there was no contract offered. Of course, he has to go somewhere. So he was looking, where can I go? I'm sure after his first stint as a head coach, did not want to take a step backward and go be a coordinator somewhere or a recruiting guy somewhere. He wanted a head coaching job. So they were limited. He went to a place where he felt comfortable and was going to be a head coach. We wished him well. We brought in a guy that has been a long time coordinator at the top of his game. Nowhere else for him to go. His desire has been to become a head coach. And we can talk transfer if you want, transition into that, but we can talk about Tony Gibson and that staff next.
Yeah, we're going to get there. So from an outsider looking in, Um, what little I knew about Coach Huff, I liked him. I thought he was a very charismatic guy. Um, Someone who obviously had built a winning program there, um, and someone who I think probably is going to be going places. I'm a little bit surprised getting this information, and maybe this is, just me not being fully plugged in to the Sun Belt or to Marshall to get this bit of information. But turning the page and maybe looking towards Tony, and this question is going to relate to that, and then I want to dive into Tony next. But um, I would say that he also had a lot of respect from his players, given the amount that left. Am I assuming correct in my
No,
in my
yeah,
thoughts
I
there?
think you're spot on, and I think that's fair of a lot of coaches in the country that if you recruit, even as from a transfer thing, and you come in and a team gels and wins a conference championship together, I think that brotherhood is going to likely want to stick together a lot of times. A run it back situation if it were, but then it wasn't that they just followed him. Most of their position group coaches left as well as part of the entire coaching staff. So it's not just the head coach left, like sometimes happens, and if they bump up to a deeper pocketed team, and then all of a sudden that coach is like, well, now I've got a little more resources. I'll get better coordinators or more expensive coordinators or something like that. It was basically like the entire team's going, and this team loved their coach like just about every head coach in the country is going to get that love, I feel like. So it was a unique situation. They all wanted to go and play together, try to, whoever had, some eligibility remaining, they wanted to try to stick together if they could. But there was no doubt in my mind a lot of recruiting of those players
Oh
of,
yeah.
I mean, that's just, I'm sure it happens at every single school. I'm not
Sure.
saying it was anything um, below the table here that doesn't go on anywhere else. You're going to have hey, we're going there. We'd love to have you. Obviously we wanted you here, and you know what you're going to have with that coach. And if it's a situation, some of them were seniors. I imagine that some of them would say, well, I don't want to go start over in a new program, a new system. I don't know. They're going with the system, with the coach. They know they're changing the logo and they're changing the locker room.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing that is different is some of the most high performing players for the Herd last year did not make their way to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So it's not like every single impact
Mm-hmm.
player went from Huntington to Hattiesburg. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for example, Mike Green's going to be playing in Baltimore this year, right? Huge piece of the Herd defense. Like, that's not the same unit if Mike Green's not on it. J.J. Roberts is going to be playing safety down in Tampa Bay for the Buccaneers. Huge piece that's not going to be in Hattiesburg, right? And you got the leading tackler from the team, Jaden Yates, hits the portal. He goes to Ole Miss, right? A.J. Turner, the leading rusher, goes to Minnesota. So some of the biggest impact players don't go with Coach Huff. They either end up in the league or to other schools. So, but the headline is really what grabs you, like Marshall team transfers, right? And what by numbers, a lot of them did go. And a lot of our productive players from a year ago that had numbers and contributed did find their way to Hattiesburg. But that top tier of player either went on to a bigger conference, a power conference, or they went to the NFL. So I'm not trying to toss shade here, but what I am trying to say is it's not the same team that was on the field in Huntington. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't just Mike Greens don't just grow on trees, at least not
Right.
for guys in Huntington. Like J.J. Roberts's don't grow on trees for guys teams like in Huntington. So they'll be good. They'll be
Mm-hmm.
improved in Hattiesburg. And I hope they
Yeah.
win some games. I really do. I think the Sun Belt made the biggest gaffe of the offseason by not scheduling Marshall and Southern Miss this
Mm-hmm.
year. That would have been must-see freaking
Oh
TV
gosh,
for
yeah.
the Sun Belt, and they didn't do it. So we'll never really know who would have legit bragging rights. But they're going to win some games. They'll be improved. And Coach Huff was always gracious with his time with us. He was on our show a number of times. I don't personally have anything against the guy. It's business. Obviously, I want the best players and coaches in Huntington to win games. but it's a business, man. And this game that we live in now is not the same game that we lived in 10 years ago, 15 years ago as fans. That 4-year player that comes to your team is a fleeting entity, right? Those guys just really don't exist very much anymore.
Especially at our level.
So it's just something you got to get used to. It's just that it happened to us on a massive scale that grabbed a bunch of headlines, and people all of a sudden started thinking, geez, what the heck is going on in Huntington, West Virginia?
Yeah.
Well, nothing that's going on anywhere any different than any other college town. It's just that our coach left a conference champion winning team to go to a 1-win team that's a conference mate. So that's what made it kind of like, what the heck is going on? But at the end of the day, we're happy where we are right now.
Yeah, and KD said, go ahead, Eric.
And I was going to say, I imagine you would be. I did some digging on Tony Gibson before we recorded this, and it's not too hard to figure out. He's a West Virginia dude. He's one of you guys, and so not that Coach Huff didn't simulate himself well enough to the fan base or to the culture there in Huntington, West Virginia. He obviously did a great job, but this feels like a son of Marshall coming home type of thing here a little
Pretty
bit.
Close.
Yeah, so he's about an hour and 40 minutes away from Huntington in a town called Van, West Virginia, in southern West Virginia. And but he went to Glenville State, and that is above Charleston on your way up to Morgantown. And his coach there was Rich Rodriguez, and who is at WVU. And his quarterback was Rod Smith, who is the offensive coordinator now at Marshall. And, there's some other ties in here, but they went on to several different years and different times were with Rich Rodriguez at different stops. So they are more of from the WVU, but he was more of I'm from the state of West Virginia guy. He went on to his best success, I feel like, down at NC State, and has been there since 2018, 2017, something like that. And was just like every time there was any kind of an opening, including at WVU, and including at Marshall, but other places as well, he was on a short list. Was like, if you want a defensive mind, you can't do any worse than Tony Gibson. And so Tony comes back now. I was at the press conference that he went to, the first introductory press conference, and he said, I may get this wrong. I apologize, Tony. I know you're listening. I think he said, this will be my 13th move. And he didn't mean just at colleges, but like moving your house. I think a lot of us as fans don't really understand that. Is like when these guys move, think of having to uproot your family and get them out of a school, take them to another state, enroll them in that school. Sometimes you don't know. It's kind of like military and getting reassigned all across the country, how often you have to move and everything. But he said, I'm getting settled into my final house and I never want to move again. And he was like, I'm not coming here for a stepping stone. I'm not coming here to try to better myself and go somewhere else. I'm coming here and this is my last stop. I want to be here and retire as head coach of Marshall University. And if you rewind to what I said earlier about year 1, year 2, year 3, and then inevitably when they said don't do it in year 4 and he did it in year 4, Coach Huff was interviewing to go elsewhere. Duke was one that he even mentioned on our show before, that he confirmed, yes, I interviewed with Duke. And he explained why and things like that. But you hear a fan base that is hearing a West Virginia guy, a West Virginia legend, coming back to the state, and that guy says, I want to be here. The coaches I am bringing want to be here. Some of them have Marshall ties, and we can go into that later. But he said, we all want to be here, and I want this to be my last stop ever. Well, that's just everything a fan base is going to want to hear in that particular issue.
100%. All right, let's talk coaching staff then. Guys who you mentioned, alluded to it, Russ. Guys who want to be here, guys who want to be Marshall people. Who are they?
KD, go ahead.
The biggest one was the only holdover from the Coach Huff staff. And when he actually made like the player type announcement, like I'm staying, and we were all like elated. That's defensive line coach Ralph Street. He's done nothing but pump out talent since he's been here. And oh, by the way, he's an all-time great herd player. He's a Hall of Famer in the Marshall Athletics Hall of Fame. He's a multi-time MAC champion. Like, it doesn't get any better than Ralph Street when you talk about a Marshall guy that's now a high-performing coach. And he's like, I ain't going anywhere. This is my home. This is where I want to be. I want to put winners on the field in Huntington. Then you point to, Russ alluded to, Rod Smith, the offensive coordinator, comes over from Jacksonville State, who was obviously Conference USA champions last year. Very high-powered run offense. Brings along with him the running backs coach from Jack State, Rod McDowell. But, we're not going to breeze past those guys because their production numbers, you can look them up. They're amazing over the past 2-3 seasons at Jack State. Defensively is where we really start to get really happy again. And that's because defensive coordinator is Shannon Morrison. He was on staff with Coach Huff a couple of years ago. He was coaching linebackers. He was one of the 4 coaches that was caught in the crossfire in the offseason of 23, and he was let go. He was out of coaching in 24, so he missed the conference championship run. But I am on record every time I get to talk about Shannon Morrison and anybody asks about the coaching staff, I think he caught a raw deal, and I think he was a freaking fall guy. And I get heated when I talk about it because there was no reason that you can tell me that he should have been let go when 2 of his 3 linebackers during his tenure are playing right now in the NFL. 2 of the 3 from the G5 level. You know what that means, man. That's hard to get into that league. And if you can make it to the league from our type of level, it means you can play some freaking ball. So he was caught in the crossfire, and Tony Gibson gets the job. Shannon Morrison comes right back for his 4th or maybe 5th stint now coaching for the herd in various roles. But, man, he's just a dude. And he's a football guy, but more importantly, he's a Marshall guy. When I talk about Shannon Morrison and Ralph Street, we're talking about 2 guys that ran out of the same tunnel that these players run out of now onto the same field. So they don't understand just what it means to put a winning football team on the field. They understand what it means to put a winning football team on the field in Huntington, West Virginia, and what it means to the people that sit in the stands. And for all the universities across the country that say, man, winning, it's different here. It's just different here. Marshall can really, really say that. It's different here because of what the football program means to this town and that city and the university. It is just different. So you have to have guys that understand that. And you used the term earlier when talking about Coach Huff, like assimilating to the school and the region and the family. He did do a good job of that. But if you're from here, you don't have to assimilate.
That's right.
You already get
That's
it.
right.
Right? So you don't have to take the time to try to fit in and try to get it. It just naturally comes through to your players. And those 2 guys are huge. But we bring back another coaching legend who is it's probably a 2nd stint, I think, with Marshall, and that's Gunter Brewer. He's coaching freaking tight ends. But I think a lot of folks around college football have heard the name Gunter Brewer. That dude was he was coaching for the herd in the heyday, dude. We're talking about 96 to 99, the leap to FBS, off of a 1AA national title, the Randy Moss era, and he's coaching wideouts and the offense in that era. Goes on to Oklahoma State for a storied career, coaching guys like Justin Blackman, those high-powered offenses. They call him the mad scientist, man. I mean, Russ and I joked a little bit about like his energy level, but he's almost 60 years old. And he's out here on social media every day. Just, dude, I'm telling you, he's an amazing guy. I'm glad to have him back. But there's a lot of young guys that are getting their first crack. Jake Ellsworth, linebackers coach, comes with Tony Gibson. He was on defensive quality control, I believe, at NC State last year. But that's an important hire for the reason that Tony Gibson was not only the DC at NC State, he also coached linebackers. So that's got to tell you he puts a lot of trust in Jake Ellsworth to be a first-time assistant coach to coach his marquee position group, which is linebackers. So Shannon Morrison played linebacker for the herd and a national champion. So look at that. You got Tony Gibson, Shannon Morrison, Jake Ellsworth. You can't tell me that this linebacking core isn't going to be on point in a 3-3-5 defense where it's going to need to be on point. So a handful of other coaches, of course, we could talk about all of them, but those are the guys that really turn my crank and get me excited about what this offense and defense could be in 2025. But it's a complete overhaul with one exception, the one lone holdover of Ralph Street, and that's the one you wanted to keep if you could only keep one.
Mm-hmm.
So before we dive into the schedule and we start to talk a little bit about where we anticipate the season going in year one under Tony Gibson, just Russ, give me kind of a rundown of where the fan base is at right now and how they feel about Coach Gibson and where the direction of this program's going.
I think
Here on July 1st as we recorded this.
Yeah, very valid to say here on July 1st because we're not yet into fall camp,
Right.
but it's at a fever pitch, if I had to
Woo.
say. And here's the deal: Marshall University is like totally different. I mean, as an Ohio State fan, you guys have to think in the offseason, are we going to be a contender for the national title? We should be, all the revenue that we bring in, all that things. It is one of those things here that football matters, that we have it every year, and it's been that way since 1971 when we changed the college football landscape where freshmen were allowed to play, because of Marshall and them coming back from the worst sports tragedy that's ever happened. So it takes a lot for people to not be excited about Marshall football here. But when you bring in a coach from the state that says, I'm not leaving, I want this to be my last stop, he brings in some players. Some of them were former Herd players that had transferred out, they transferred back in. He brings some players that played right here. There's 4 or 5 schools within an hour that we've brought some players in from high school that are coming here. So we also hear everyone that was a headline reader saying, well, Marshall couldn't play in a bowl game. They're probably 136th in the country. I don't know if you've seen them. We see them, but it's idiots on Twitter that just because they pay $8 a month to get a check beside their name and have 200 followers, they think they'll throw out an Excel spreadsheet or a graphic or something like that, and all of a sudden someone should take them seriously. But we've been predicted to finish 14th out of 14 in the Sun Belt to some of these guys. We've been predicted to finish anywhere from 131 to 136 in the country because all they did was read a headline and say, well, the entire team left. So they just assume we didn't bring anybody in. Everyone that follows this team is at a fever pitch because they're pissed off and they want to show everybody that they're wrong. You just don't know. You did no homework. You did no research. You don't know the kind of people that we brought in. The energy is through the roof right now from the regime change. It's how soon can we get back to that title game, that conference title game? How can we prove these naysayers wrong? Ticket sales through the roof. Record sales to this point right now. There's more preseason season tickets have been sold than any other year. And the stadium opened in 1991, for what I consider our current modern era of talking about ticket sales, is with this stadium. And it's a fever pitch, and everyone just wants to see these new players. Everyone wants to see this new coaching staff. Everyone wants to enter a new era and just basically tell everybody that has done nothing but try to dunk on us for not being able to have enough coaches or players to safely play in a bowl game that, hey, we're not dead. We're Marshall. We're coming right back, and we're going to show you.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I got goosebumps, guys. That fired me up, man.
Come,
I love it.
Make the drive, Eric. Make the drive. Come
Hey,
down and
I
watch.
a funny story for you guys. So I did a lot of work in southeastern Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working in Gallipolis,
Not
And
far.
I'm
Yep.
like, man, I am so close to Marshall, and I have never seen the stadium. And I took the long way home back to Columbus one day, and I went and I drove around the stadium. And I'm like, yeah, I love Marshall, dude. It's you, like I said, you guys won me over on when you guys came up to Columbus, dude. I was like, these guys are all right, man. I love them, man. No, I'm gonna be rooting. I'm rooting for Marshall, dude. They might be Cinderella, but to a lot of people, just because, like you said, a lot of headline readers. But you don't have that history that you guys have, and not have some people who got a backbone about them, right? Who that tradition will speak to people, you know.
Yeah.
And it causes you to like have a little bit more pride in yourself and your program, a little bit more gumption, a little bit more belief in yourself. Hey, we've done this before, we're gonna do it again, type of thing. So no, I love this story. I'm all for it, man. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players. Obviously, we can cheer and we can root and we can have all the great headlines we want, but it's all going to come down to the guys on the field getting the job done.
Yeah.
Who are going to be some of those guys this year?
KD.
Well, if you're going to, this whole thing, obviously, from the Tony Gibson standpoint, is going to be built around defense, but most fans want to talk about offense. Offense is what generally sells the tickets, gets people in the seats, and keeps them hooting and hollering to create that environment that we love so much inside Jones C. Edwards Stadium. And if you're going to talk offense, you got to start with the quarterback, because we lost ours, and he was reigning player of the year, offensive newcomer of the year, newcomer of the year in the Sun Belt last year, and he's now going to be playing in Hattiesburg. So you're looking to replace that, and how do you do it? Well, you hit the portal. You bring in a handful of guys that are going to compete. So we feel like we've got three really good quarterbacks that could execute this offense, but one has separated himself from the other two, so to speak, and that's former Florida Gators commit, then transfer to Syracuse, now transfer to Marshall, Carlos Del Rio Wilson. And some of your fans from these bigger SEC schools that are familiar, follow Florida, or who might be their competition, they may remember that name. He was like the number 6 quarterback coming out in his class out of high school. So there's a lot of hype coming around out of him a couple of years ago, and he's didn't work out in Gainesville, didn't work out in Syracuse, because you were kind of behind a really good quarterback up in Syracuse last year, so it's kind of hard to find the field. So he's going to bring his talents to Huntington, West Virginia, and run this spread type offense that's been racking up points and yards for a long time. Not just at Jacksonville State the past couple of years, but Tulane under Rich Rod and West Virginia under Rich, all those Pat White and Steve Slayton days. That's this type of offense. And even though you don't want to talk about it, it's just a weird circumstance that we have to mention Michigan, because this offense made its way to Michigan during the Denard Robinson era, when he was Big Ten Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, that type thing. And that was Rod Smith's as quarterbacks coach, who's now our OC. So we're expecting a really run-heavy offense with just a lot of tempo and a lot of pace. We hit the portal hard on the running back side of things as well. You bring in Tony Mathis from Houston, who's coming off of an injury. You're bringing in, I got it right here. You're bringing in Joe Sean Barbie from McNeese State, who was absolutely freaking electric in the Southland Conference last year. Michael Allen comes over, was the number 2, I believe, running back coming out of the portal. He was at UNLV last year, played 3 games, and opted out of the season because of all that turmoil and the NIL stuff that was going on in UNLV, promises unkept, So he's like, well, I'll just preserve my body. And then he ends up in Huntington. But perhaps the biggest sleeper pick is a guy by the name of Justin Williams Thomas, who comes to us from Cal, but he initially committed to Tennessee before transferring to Cal. He was a who's who, on the offer list coming out of high school, and he's coming off of an injury, that type of stuff. So we've got a lot of guys here that are in what I call a show me year. They got to prove they can do it coming off of an injury. You got some guys that are in their final year of eligibility that also want to show that they can play at the next level. We haven't even done our wide receiver breakdown yet, but I got into some preparation on it earlier, and it was a big point of concern for me. But as I got into that, I started feeling a little bit better about it. I'm not sure we're going to see too much of a downfield passing threat. Looks like it's going to be a lot of short to mid range, passes with a lot of make a move and try to get loose type of deal. Then you flip to the other side of the ball. Defense, we're going to run that Tony Gibson 3-3-5, like I mentioned earlier. A rebuilt type defensive line, a rebuilt linebacking core, and pretty much an all new secondary. But man, we have previewed a lot of those positions, and in a 3-3-5, that ever important linebacking unit has got to be on point, and that might be the strongest unit on this team by no accident. You get a handful of guys out of the portal. Javay Gilmore comes to a 6'4", 235-pounder from Mississippi State, probably going to be on that outside. What a monster. I mean, this guy can freaking move. You get some youngsters that were all-staters in West Virginia that went to play for Tony Gibson. A guy by the name of Cannon Lewis. He's coming back home to play linebacker for the Herd. A couple of pieces from that Jack State defense. Jabril El Amin, who was a great linebacker for them. We could talk about a lot of guys, but the fact is, on paper, we look great. But until you start smacking helmets, you really don't know what you're going to look like.
Right.
So it's a lot of speculation right now because it's a lot of all new. You can go to a lot of position groups up and down this Herd roster and go, wow, they have no returning starters, very few returning contributors. Or you can go, wow, they had one returning starter here, one returning starter there. I'd say the biggest two weapons that we have that are returning, and Russ can piggyback off what I'm about to say, it's got to be tight end Toby Payne. Local guy, Polka High School. Shout out to the Polka Dots. I think he's going to be, all said and done, probably your first team all-state or all-conference tight end. He's the best in the conference, if you ask me. And then it's offensive lineman Jalen Slappy returning. He started every game last year for the Herd. He was a mid-year starter halfway through his freshman year for the Herd. He's a good one, man. And he's got the potential to be a first team all-conference offensive lineman as well. So there are some pieces to be filled, but there's a little bit of hope of some great players that returned. Russ, who did I miss?
That returned, there's not a lot that played. I mean, we went through and we were talking on another show when we were asked, and I just wanted to highlight how bad it was. We had 3 snaps at linebacker that came back this year. Mm-hmm. We were in a 4-2-5 last year, and the starting 2 are now in the SEC at Ole Miss and Kentucky. A lot of the defensive backfield was gone. We did bring Jadarius Green McKnight returns. Wody, Daytwan Smith is back. So there's a couple that had a lot of snaps that they played in the defensive backfield. But, I mean, you're replacing – I mean, we lost our entire special teams. We lost our entire defensive line except for one player, Braden Ward, got a lot of playing time. Most of the offensive line, we had 8 starts and then 12 starts, came back. So we had, I think, 21, 22 starts, couple spot starts in there, and just 2 players that really did. So, I mean, you're talking about every snap at quarterback, every yard at running back. Brian Robinson is the only wide receiver that caught a pass that's back, and he caught 8 last year. I mean, it's just like systematically replacing every single position group. Unheard of, And again, that's why a lot of people are saying, oh, yeah, 131 out of 136. These guys, who are these guys? Well, we brought in a lot of guys. It's just there's not a lot returning that you can say, look at their production that they had here, except for what KD already mentioned, Jalen Slappy and Tariq Montgomery on the offensive line, and then Toby Payne at tight end. So it's just who we brought in from the portal. Also, people that were here that didn't get an opportunity last year are now going to get an opportunity to step up. And defensive end, we already mentioned Braden Ward played a little bit. Jacarius Clayton is going to play a little bit. So we're going to see an influx of new faces and some that stayed that just did not get a lot of reps last year. Mm-hmm. So
All right, we've talked coaches, we've talked roster. Let's talk schedule. I'm gonna pull this up. I got this right off Marshall's website, their football website. So shout out Marshall. I guess their athletic department there. Um, let's dive into it, man. You guys aren't afraid. Game one, baby. Let's just see what we got, man. The mighty Georgia Bulldogs. Um, going to go right down there to Athens and take on the Bulldogs in game number one to start the season. Hey, I saw you guys in Columbus, Ohio, and that was the team that won the national championship, and you guys put on a pretty good show. So I think you guys can go down there and give them a game, right? Give them hell, right?
I think it's all about just going down there and showing the nation that we're not going to roll over. We'll go down there and put up a fight. And when you go up against resources to where, like when you and I and KD did the previews against Marshall and Ohio State last year, and you were just like, yeah, this guy's going to be in the NFL. This guy's going to be in the NFL. This guy's going to be in the NFL. And your second string, can start elsewhere, and your third string can start elsewhere, and that's how it's going to be against Georgia. Their depth is just going to get us. But again, you go down there and you just throw your best punches, and you just say, we're not just going to go around playing bottom of the barrel teams. We're going to play the best, and we used to do that in the past, and we have historically been that team that people were kind of afraid of. You and I talked last year about when I was in Ohio Stadium in 2004, and it took Mike Nugent kicking a 55-yarder with no time on the clock for Ohio State to come out with a win in their stadium against Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down to Georgia and we lost by a touchdown. We went down to Tennessee and we had them rocking. And then our quarterback, after a long touchdown pass during the celebration, he lands on his knee wrong and is out. We went to K-State when they were highly ranked, 6th in the nation, and we beat them in Manhattan, Kansas. We have just been that team. So I'm not saying we're going to go down there and shock the world or make any kind of crazy prediction, but we're going to go down there and we're going to throw some haymakers and we're going to say, Marshall's still here.
Yeah. What you do is you go down there and you try to get all those headline readers to go, oh, well, they weren't supposed to be any good. And you don't have to win that game. You want to win that game. I mean, Russ highlighted a bunch of wins, but the one that he forgot was the most recent
I didn't forget. I was letting you do it.
At Notre Dame, right? They didn't want to give us a chance either. And you go into South Bend, Indiana, and shock the Irish. But the Herd was the better team on the field that day. If you feel froggy, you can get on Peacock and watch the entire game. This is not hyperbole. The Herd was the better team on the field that day. We did not get lucky. I don't care what they say. We won that game outright. And Marshall is no stranger to big games. You go into 100 and whatever your stadium seats, 110,000 in Columbus, Ohio, and you're on the wrong side of the scoreboard on that one. But there's not a player or there's not a fan in that stadium that's like, man, these guys got some players. They're pretty good. I think Marshall probably won over some people. It's like, man, this is a team I could cheer for. Just like,
Absolutely.
It won you over. It's got to be better than cheering for Kent State or any of those other Ohio MAC schools, right? We got to be more exciting than them. I mean, good Lord, we left the MAC freaking 20 years ago and still have tied for the number one MAC championship. I mean, that's true. So we're not afraid of Georgia. Georgia doesn't expect us to be, right? We want to go down there, compete, come out injury-free. You're not going to face a tougher defense the rest of the year than what you're going to face in Athens, Georgia in week one. So that's a barometer for who you kind of think you might be. And you come out of there healthy and you put on a good show and you feel really good about it. And, hey, if you happen to get a win, well, geez, I guess the playoff run starts at that point now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but
there you go.
If you keep it close and you keep it respectable and you come out healthy, you got to think that every other game on the schedule has got to be winnable. If you take Georgia's punches and come out still standing, you might be Rocky Balboa. You lose the fight, but you don't quit. That you don't throw in the towel. And I think that's what that one just says to me.
I love the subtle flex there by KD and his mustache on the Mac a little bit right there.
Hey, numbers ball don't lie, Eric. Ball don't lie.
All right, let's keep on trucking. Let's talk about the next two together here. Missouri State, they're joining Conference USA this year, and so they're going to get a welcome to the Division One here at with a little trip to Huntington, and then Eastern Kentucky. I'm guessing that's a kind of like I mean, close in proximity, maybe a little bit of a little rivalry there, possibly a little
It's
bit.
just south of Lexington by maybe 25, 30 minutes or something. Maybe not even that far. Richmond, Kentucky's where it's
Mhm.
at,
Yeah,
and so it's an easy travel for them over.
yeah.
And we do have a bit of a history with them in basketball and
Mm-hmm.
baseball and some of our Olympic sports and things like that. And one of our uh, heard basketball players that has gone on to be a head coach is currently there as the men's basketball head coach. So there's some history, but it'll be a good travel. Hopefully that they bring a decent amount of fans that want to come over and see Marshall. So yeah, it's not like right across the river because we're on the border of Eastern Kentucky, but it's close enough. You're looking at 2 to 2.5 hours away.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at these two games, obviously you're penciling those in for 2 wins if you're a Marshall fan, right? Eastern
Yeah.
Kentucky, I could see some sort of pseudo rivalry developing if they were an FBS school, like if they were a Conference USA school because of the
Mm-hmm.
proximity and the ease of travel and that kind of. But as it were, it's really not. We've played them a number of times in recent years. They picked up the ball for us in the COVID year, and we went. They put themselves on the schedule, and that was awesome. We needed a game, so we appreciate that. But you're right; it's a welcome to the FBS for Missouri State and Conference USA.
Yeah, they go to USC first, and then so they're traveling out west, and then the very next week have to come to us.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's not much you can say about those other than if you're a Herd fan, you're probably penciling those in for a win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, Before we dive into the Sun Belt schedule here, why isn't there a rivalry between you guys and Ohio?
There is.
Athens and you guys. I mean, you
There
guys are
is.
so close. Is
That's
there?
our
Yeah,
that's our historic rival. It's the battle
From
for
the
the
battle for
bell.
the bell. Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
they just it's on the schedule, but it's like every I don't know 2 out of every 10 years now
Mm,
that it's on the schedule, and it's just one of those scheduling quirks. When we left the MAC and we went to Conference USA, we would still throw them on the schedule. When we went to the Sun Belt, we've still thrown them on the schedule, but schedules are made so many years in
right.
advance now, and everybody has to get their conference games in, and you've got these other things, and they want to sign up for some money games, and travel for those, and we do too. So it's one of those that we're never going to see them schedule every year. But a lot of the fans want that because some of our fans live there in Athens,
Mhm.
Ohio. It's
Mm-hmm.
an hour and a half at best to get up there, and it's easy travel. It's a good game, but you're just not going to see it more than
Yeah.
20% of the years.
Yeah.
One every 5 years.
It feels like if you could get that on the schedule, say once every 4 years, so that a freshman class gets the opportunity to play Ohio, whether at home or on the road, just to keep that rivalry fresh in everybody's mind. But yeah, that's a historic rival, big time. And when they are on the schedule, even in other sports, we build it up like it's a battle for the bell softball edition or
Yeah.
baseball or whatever. Yeah, it's just how it is. Logistically, you just can't get them as much as you would like, and but we like playing Ohio.
Good to know. Excellent. All right. Let's talk conference play here.
Hmm.
All right. I'm just gonna go through. I'm just gonna go through the schedule. I will stop when we get to this fourth one. At actually, I do want to talk about Old Dominion here too. At Middle Tennessee State, at Louisiana, Old Dominion. I know a little bit about them. Had those guys on a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
They're feeling pretty good about their football team this year.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I want you guys to talk a little bit about that. And then Texas State, one opportunity to give them a swift kick in the butt on the way out. I'm imagining here.
Hmm.
So, your thoughts on those block of games there?
Well, so Middle Tennessee, just for the other viewers, is that's Conference USA, so it's out of conference for
My
us,
bad.
and
Thank
that's
you.
all right. That's all right. So our first four, I think KD and I are on the same page. We kind of expect to be 3-1 coming out of conference play.
Mhm.
2-2 at the worst, I would say, but 3-1 I think is not just doable; it's almost expected. So then you've got those other three games that you mentioned there at Louisiana, and then two home games. Old Dominion coming here and Texas State coming here before they bolt to the Pac-12. Um, the Raging Cajuns, that was who we faced at Louisiana for the conference championship game in December. So that's a rematch, and it's down there again, but it's just a different team, that's going down there. So that's going to be a big one. They are expected to make it back or be one of the favorites to make it back to the conference. So that's an early challenge for us.
Mhm.
Old Dominion, I think, is going to be drastically improved. They had a bunch of one score losses last year, including to us as well. But they get Jason Henderson back, who is just an absolute tackling machine. I think he's averaged about 145 tackles per year at that middle linebacker spot. And they had a freshman quarterback that worked his way into the starting rotation last year in Colton Joseph that is a very dynamic player. So I think that'll be a good matchup. And I do think that they might be one of the dark horses in the East to make a run. Things could go one way, things could go the other, but there's certainly one that I'm watching. And then Texas State coming here, they've just backed up the truck to their head coach Kenny. They are going to the Pac-12, which is a step down from the Sun Belt. Um, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But yeah, we don't hate them for leaving. I've always been kind of indifferent, except for I have some friends that live in some close friends that left Huntington to live in San Marcos. So I was looking forward to a road trip down there that will now never happen for a football game. But those three, I think that is a pretty tough start to conference play. But the thing about the Sun Belt is there are really no good weeks off in the Sun
No.
Belt. It is, especially in the East, the division we're in. It it is, I feel, the toughest non-power division for college football. I think our division of the Sun Belt Conference East is not only the most exciting, but it's also just a week in, week out slugfest juggernaut.
Yeah, it looks
Mhm.
like a gauntlet, dude.
Yeah,
It
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 really
it,
is. That
it
that G
does.
at that G5 level, we hate using those monikers, but we know what that means. We know the levels. It's all relative. So when you're on the G5 level and you're talking relative strength, that Sunbelt East Division really is a gauntlet. You can't take a week off, or you will find yourself out of contention for a conference championship. And no, we haven't been able to run the table. Even we tripped up last year and needed some help, and we got that help. But you still find yourself behind the eight ball and then have to win out. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you do? Do you pack it in and go, well, we'll try again next year? Or do you give it all you got, try to win out and still maybe fall short? Or do you get the help you need and find yourself in the title game? And that's what happened to us. But um, it ain't going to be easy coming out of the gate. But as we're doing a running total, I'm trying to keep it in my head. And I think if you come out looking at 5-2, that's a pretty good scenario through those first seven.
I think just about everybody would take 5-2 when you open up at Georgia and you have the early conference schedule that we have. I
Yeah.
think 4-3, most people would say, "Hey, I feel pretty good about 4-3 because then you only have to get two more to get a bowl, and that's kind of everyone's like floor." I think that everybody wants to be at. So I'm not saying, "Hey, I'm going to be doing backflips when we're 4-3," but I think when you're talking about we returned 0 yards from quarterback, running back, 82 yards from wide receiver, 3 snaps from linebacker, and nothing from special teams returns. And one player got some meaningful snaps. at defensive line, and we have two guys that played some nickel in the defensive backfield. You're talking about replacing all that, and we're saying possibly 5-2, 4-3. I think that almost everybody's going to be surprised by that, that are non-Marshall fans.
Mm-hmm.
All right, get your second bye here on October 25th, and then the remainder of the schedule. Real quick, Coastal Carolina. Do you like their colors or not?
I hate it, especially the field. I mean, it just I'm happy for them because they like it or whatever. I'm not one of these guys that picks fights with most schools and everything. I think everybody should take pride in their school, and they do. And I was cheering as loud as I could for them in the College World Series. They're a conference mate, and I wish them success anytime that we're not playing them. But I cannot stand to look at that field. And KD and I have talked, and he's said this before, a little bit of teal works a lot.
A long way.
And you can use that as a highlight color and an accent color, and it would be really nice. And I'm sure if they had some all whites that had some, teal accent to it, it'd probably look real good. But when you come out in all teal and you're playing on a teal turf, and it's too much. It's too much. Mm. Now, I will say that game is a Thursday game, so that's going to be a challenge as well. We do have a bye before that, and we have a bye not really, but 9 days before we have to play our next game. So we don't have a short turnaround, which we've had the last 3 years. Yeah. 3 years. So that's good, but it's a Thursday night game. So, our fans have to take off Thursday and Friday, most likely, just to go down and watch that game. So I'm not sure how many we travel, but you probably know, being around the Eastern Kentucky part, as you and I have talked before off of the camera, you probably know, but a lot of Southern West Virginia and Eastern Kentucky and, Herd area, Myrtle Beach might as well be Southern West Virginia South,
That's right.
But so I'm sure we'll have a good crowd there, but that's going to be one of those, it's a Thursday game, really depends on how we're doing going into that game. If we're 5-2, I think, there are going to be a lot of people that will want to go make that trip, but it being a Thursday night game, those are just tough for everybody to go to.
Yeah. Well, I'll be sitting right here doing my call-in show with Ohio State fans, and right over here to my left will be that football game on my television. I will definitely be watching that one. All right, James Madison. Kurt Signetti went to Indiana and took his Google machine with him, and left James Madison, but they're still doing a good program.
Yeah.
At Georgia State. At Appalachian State, however you want to pronounce it. I say Appalachian.
You said it right.
I know, but most people don't. All right, they don't know. They don't know like we know.
Yeah, there actually are two legitimate ways that you can say it. You can say it Appalachian, and then you can say it the correct way.
That's right. That's right. And then, it's kind of like people who sing at church, "Are you washed in the blood?" No, I'm washed, buddy. Come on. Right. And then it finished off with Georgia Southern. So those last four games there, James Madison's the name that pops out to everybody. Of course, here in Ohio, App State makes an appearance because of what they did up in Ann Arbor. We love to rub that into the Michigan fans who we deal with on a daily basis. But those block of four games, man, give me your guys' rundown. Katie, I'll start with you.
That's tough. That is the gauntlet right there. That Thursday game at Coastal kicks off the gauntlet to close the season out. And then there are no weeks off. Because you look at James Madison and they're always good. They're always competitive. And it's this weird thing, since we've both joined the Sun Belt, we go to Bridgeforth and beat them twice. They come to Huntington and beat us. So the home team cannot hold serve in those games right now. So it would really be great for the Herd to take two in a row there. You just can't count on it happening because they're always so competitive. Here's the biggest fumble of the year, aside from Southern Miss and Marshall not being on the schedule together. It's that Georgia State away game. is an absolute crime that the Sun Belt Conference saw fit to put Marshall on the road for 75 week. Mm-hmm. That is our game closest to the plane crash. And we've only been on the road like 5 times in our history, since we've been kind of celebrating that game. And the Sun Belt, for whatever reason, felt the need to reward their defending conference champion with a road game for 75 week. It's an absolute travesty. We don't think we're special for a lot of reasons, but putting a home game on the schedule for Huntington, West Virginia in or around November 14th, we kind of deserve that.
And let me explain why for everyone watching or listening that may not understand why. It's not about some kind of home field advantage or anything like that, but just the absolute level of things that go on campus that week, but also particularly on the day of the crash. The fountain ceremony on November the 14th that we have here is at our Memorial Student Center. People go to the gravesite of there were 6 unnamed, couldn't determine identity, but knew that they were all 6 players. They knew who the 6 are. They just didn't know which of the 6 was which. They're all buried together at Spring Hill Cemetery, and it is 8 to 10 blocks from the stadium. Mm-hmm. That you just go up 20th Street, and our players are going to have to miss that because they're going to be on the road. They'll have to, maybe they go early that morning, maybe the fountain ceremony, then immediately fly down to Atlanta, maybe. But I mean, it just seems like why, and then fans have to do the same. If fans are wanting to drive, they have to wait and drive early that morning or late that night, the night before, after going through the emotional stuff there. And it just robs everybody of being able as a community to be here. And I know a lot of people, and you and I talked about this on the show last year, but a lot of people really don't understand that we're not talking about some players 55 years ago. It was the coaching staff, the players, and local fans that were on the plane. Mm-hmm. And my neighbor right next door to me right now, at 14 years old, she lost her parents because they were on the plane. Diagonally across from her, at 13 years old, 12 years old, something like that, she lost her parents. They still live here. I'm talking about right now. I don't mean back 55 years ago. I mean like right now I can throw a baseball and hit their place. Within 2 blocks, pick up 2 to 3 more families that their parents or grandparents were on that plane. So those families are still here. So that's why we get kind of up in arms when people were talking about, well, it happened 55 years ago. It doesn't really mean anything to them. No, it was community people, and they are still here. And for us to be on the road, that's it sucks, man. Because I would like to go to that game and everything, but I don't want to miss all the stuff here too. And I may still go to that game, but when I go to a game, I like to travel down the day before and really take in that town or city or wherever we're at, and get with their fans and try to get some of the culture that they have and stuff like that. And fans are now going to have to choose: do they do that, or do they stay here for the memorials that mean so much for us?
Yeah. So that was a gaffe by the Sun Belt Conference, right? But talking about the game, we owe them one. We went down to Atlanta a couple of years ago, and they beat us, and they weren't a very good team. They were like a 4-win team, and we couldn't get anything going, and they ended up beating us. So then your final 2 games, you get Appalachian State, which is a great game. A lot of Herd fans, when they heard initially that we were going to go to the Sun Belt, that is the absolute team they pointed to and went, yep, awesome. It's great to be playing App State again. This is an old Southern Conference rivalry. And then you look at the final game, home game, which will be senior day, obviously. Georgia Southern, that was our trip up. The meltdown last year. We lost by a point to them after being up, 17 points or something. And if we win that game, we run the table in the Sun Belt. And it's because they beat us. We needed help backing into the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. But luckily, Georgia State tripped up, and then we went down to Harrisonburg and beat JMU to secure our spot. So that final 5-game run is absolutely brutal if you're a Herd fan, and that's your make or break portion of your schedule. I mean, if you go in with 5 wins or 4, if you go in with 4 wins, having to win 2 out of those 5 looks pretty tough. And I don't know if you can pencil any of them in and go, that's a definite win. That's a definite win. I don't think you can do that. So it'd be much better to go in there 5-2, only needing 1 to be bowl eligible. But who knows what everybody's going to look like late in the season. Right. Injuries and portal and all that. But, man, this is not an easy schedule for the Herd. We did not get any favors from the Sun Belt.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys one more thing about the schedule. And I know this is going to be incredibly hard to do given everything we've talked about so far. Roster turnover, a lot of guys you don't know if they're going to be healthy or as far as coming off injuries, new coaching staff, difficult schedule. What is the absolute basement? What is the absolute ceiling? Throw a number on it. And this one, I have a feeling this number could be really wide.
Yeah.
It could, but I feel like it's a pretty concise window. I feel this way. KD and I, we usually do this like 2 weeks before the season starts, and so we haven't discussed this or anything, we haven't. But I feel like 6-6 is that sweet spot, and I feel like we could go 8-4. But I think that you're just with the schedule that you have, and it's a tall ask in year one of implementing all this with all these players. I feel like between 6-6 and 8-4, so either 6-6, 7-5, 8-4. I think that's where we land when all the dust is settled.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. And I'll point to some recent history. In 2021, we hired a brand new coach by the name of Charles Huff, replacing a coach that had just gone to a conference championship game. Doc Holliday went to the Conference USA championship game in 2020. We lost that game, and we made a coaching change. In year one under Coach Huff, we go 7-6 and win. And bowl game is the bare minimum, really. That's the expectation. The expectation in Huntington has always been we play for championships. We're not always able to do that, but you know this, Eric. There are just some towns, some universities that no matter what happens, they just always can win games. And Marshall's had more conference championships over the past decade than they've had sub 6-win seasons. I mean, Huntington's just a place you can win games. Yeah, there's a lot of new, but this ain't the same kind of new. You can hit the portal and create a championship caliber team in one off season. You can. It's hard to do, but you can. So to hit the portal and create a competitive bowl eligible team, I don't feel like it's that hard to do. Marshall's not going to be as bad as a lot of people are thinking they're going to be. Come on, man. So I'm with Russ. It feels like a 6-6 team should be the minimum. If you can somehow get to 9, I think people are going to be over the moon about that. So I'm kind of somewhere in there at 8 and 9 win ceiling and a 6-win basement, honestly.
I got one more Marshall question, and then I want to talk a conference, and I want to talk a little bit of conference talk. And congratulations, guys! Tap yourself on the back. You guys have officially made it the longest episode so far.
That's how we do, man. We can't shut up.
We talk.
They just win championships in Huntington, and they break records, baby.
That's right. We talk and grow mustaches. That's what we do around here.
I wonder if it's some of the moonshine you've been talking about, but
different era, man. That was a different era.
I've got some downstairs that I could bring up.
Nice. All right. I'll have to add that to my Angel's Envy that I have back here that was given to me by a listener. Okay. I've been sitting here listening for the last hour plus, and I think in my head I have a headline for Marshall football in 2025 I want to run by you guys. And tell me if you think this is right or am I off a little bit. Marshall football 2025. She's Cinderella, but she's pissed off.
Well,
I would take it. I tell you, I was asked to sum it up. I believe it was on, I don't think it's aired yet, so I won't say, but I think that I summed it up in one word, which was maybe what the question was posed is if you could sum it up, and I did it in one word, and it was redemption. And it's redemption as a school because of we had to cancel the bowl game because of the mass exodus. It's that happened after a conference championship winning team. We have a first year head coach that has been just dying to get that shot. We have an offensive coordinator that we didn't really dive into this, but he has been dying to run his own offense with the entire set of keys and not have anybody else doing it, which he was always under Rich Rodriguez most of the time, who wanted to call most of his own plays. So now he has that opportunity. You've got Shannon Morrison, the defensive coordinator, that gets to come back, and it's his fourth time here as a coach after playing here and winning championships as a player. And so redemption for him to get to come back. And some of these players that have left Marshall come back to Marshall and then were at local high schools and went elsewhere because they weren't recruited, and now they've been brought back to Marshall. So you've got these players, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who was highly touted to go to Florida, and it didn't pan out, and so there's his redemption. Justin Williams Thomas, we talked about, was one of the most highly recruited running backs in that class. Who's who of the SEC that wanted him? He goes to Tennessee, he gets injured. He goes to Cal, he gets injured, and now it's his redemption story. So I think the entire thing, the headline is just redemption. But if I had to pick one to say, yeah, I'd be okay with that. Yeah, Cinderella's pissed off.
Yeah, I'll take that. I don't think any of us are sitting here going, we're going to win it all.
Yeah.
We're calling it now. But what we're really okay with being is your freaking season spoiler. That's what we would love to be for all you smack talking fan bases who think the Herd ain't got it going on this year. They got no chance, no shot. We'd love to be the team that marches into your town on a Saturday and takes you out of contention of a championship. And if we do that enough times, we go to a bowl game. And if we do that even more times, we find ourselves in the position where you want to be, which is back in the conference championship game. So I'm absolutely okay with being Cinderella because hell hath no fury, right? Like a woman scorned.
Oh,
and
I was married to her one time.
So I'll take that. I think that's a good bit of messaging this year.
Excellent. All right, let's talk conference realignment real fast.
Cool.
Texas State, they're going to the Pac-2, the new Pac-12, I guess. I'm really intrigued to see how that all fits in a year down the road. But that means the Sun Belt might be looking for somebody new. And if I were to get a phone call from the Sun Belt that says, Eric, you're in charge of the College Huddle, and we respect your opinion, who's the one school that you say we should welcome in? I would immediately, and I don't know if he would want me to say this or not, but I would immediately go to Western Kentucky. I think it makes sense geographically. I think it makes sense for you guys, for Marshall. I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody from Western Kentucky or on the Hilltopper podcast. I don't know if they would even want to make that move or not. I know that they fly that Conference USA flag a lot over there, and they do a good job of that. But that's the one school I feel like makes sense. I'd love to get your guys' take on that, and then I would also love to hear who you have heard the Conference USA might be interested, or excuse me, who the Sun Belt might be interested in.
Let's talk pie in the sky first.
Okay,
because Russ and I approached this from the viewpoint that some other movement has occurred. Because it would be really easy for us to be like, oh, you go get Tulane or you go get Memphis but that's not realistic. We probably feel like those teams are going to be moving somewhere as well. So number one, we think the best strategy for the Sun Belt is to do nothing until movement occurs, and then you see who might be available. We also are in agreement that you go after the biggest value to the conference overall, because it's all about creating value, increasing that media deal, and getting a bigger payout per school. All right, so we're on the same page there. If we're pie in the sky and certain teams are available, the number one team on just about everybody's list is going to be East Carolina, because they fit like a glove in the East. And what that would really mean is that you would probably take Georgia State and push them to the West. And then you have a really concise, well-built Sunbelt East division and still a really competitive, concise Sunbelt West division. So that's your number one pie in the sky team. If I can pick one and I get my choice of realistic teams, I want East Carolina. But number two would probably be Western Kentucky for me. Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. East Carolina, if you just look at the footprint and you bring up the Sun Belt map right now and you see that we're getting rid of Texas, which was out on an island, as everybody's been calling it, by itself in that West Division. But also think about, take football out of it, take basketball out of it. You've got volleyball, you've got Old Dominion over in Norfolk on the coast having to drive all the way over to San Marcos, Texas, which is in between Austin and San Antonio, for anybody that doesn't know where exactly they're located in Texas. Because you can say Texas and it might not be right there next to Louisiana and Arkansas,
Right.
We used to have to do that in Conference USA and go to play UTEP, which is right across from Juarez, Mexico. And we shrink the footprint no matter what we're doing right now. And I think that's great. It's going to help out with travel and things like that. But we have an opportunity to get better on a media deal, on a football playing level, on a travel regionality, but also passionate fans. Nothing against Texas State. And I've ran into and talked to several over the years that I felt like were really good representatives of the Sun Belt and everything. But we have an opportunity to get an ECU, and you talk about passion, not just in football, but their baseball is out of this world. And the Sun Belt, we feel like, has just risen so much over the past 4 seasons. And we have an opportunity to do that even better. And you look at James Madison versus ECU, ODU versus ECU, us versus ECU, in state with Appalachian State and ECU in North Carolina. It fits so well. And they get so many people coming to their games. And that's what we want in the Sun Belt. Is we're what's missing in college football right now, when you have teams from California in the ACC and teams from California in the Big Ten, which used to be, that northern Midwest area. Everything just does not make sense anymore. The Sun Belt still makes sense. And you've got college towns, largely, except for Georgia State. Almost everything else is a college town of passionate fans that attend their games. And ECU fits that so well. WKU is a step down to me from ECU, but I would still take them for the success they have in their athletic department and that footprint, getting the Sun Belt into Kentucky instead of Texas. Mm-hmm. And the other teams after that, I don't really know.
Nothing that
nothing to me other than those. Now, if we got to take 3 teams and go from 13 to 16, then I think it's easy to throw in, if you're getting Western Kentucky, to take a Middle Tennessee State with them. But they don't move the needle for me, and nobody over there cheers for MTSU. It's more about Tennessee at that point. I think ECU's the move. And what would have to happen is ESPN comes in and says, hey, AAC, we're going to renegotiate because it's in the contract that we can, because this team's left, this team's left. They haven't done it yet. I felt like they were continuing to try to wait and see, but you look at what all they've lost over the years with Houston and SMU recently, just all these different teams that were there. Their contract goes through 2031, or that's when it renegotiate, or when it would have to be extended, or a new contract. So does the Sun Belt. And right now, their contract is so much better per school than the Sun Belt. Mm-hmm. But you start looking at a lot of those teams were the old Conference USA, and you take some of the big names out of it. And if Memphis leaves and Tulane leaves, you just really don't have a lot left. You know,
You've got
uh,
Conference USA like 4.0 in
yeah.
the AAC at that point.
So ECU at that point would not want to go there, especially if that conference media deal is going to flip flop with the Sun Belt. I feel like they fit better in the Sun Belt. Travel would be easier in the Sun Belt. Passion would be better in the Sun Belt. And if the money changes just a little bit, that's where it could really get interesting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Excellent. This was a lot of fun, guys. I knew when you guys agreed that you were going to come on, I think this is going to be a good show, and you guys delivered, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys hopping on here, talking some herd with me, man. Really looking forward to following your team this year and catching a few games on the telly. Tell everybody, maybe they're a Marshall fan, maybe they're just a college football fan and they stumbled on this. Tell everybody where they can find you guys at.
Go ahead, Katie.
Well, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Thundercast_pod. You can watch the show on YouTube or listen to it on your favorite podcasting outlet. And if you find that you are on our schedule, give us a shout, man. We would love to do a collab with you and talk about the game on the schedule. We're always up for some cool stuff like that. And like I said in the lead in, we are really proud to be members of the College Huddle. We think this networking group is awesome. This podcasting network is great. You guys do a great job. I love being invited on to talk ball with you. Even if we only do it once or twice a year, it feels like we just did it last week. You know
I know,
what I mean?
right?
So it's super cool. But yeah, we're also on Facebook and all the other things as well. But if you really want to get into the discussion with us, then follow us on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. That's the place to be. We appreciate the time, man. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
And if all else fails, go over to thecollegehuddle.com, scroll on over to G5, Group of Five. You'll find Marshall down there. We're going to be trying to expand the College Huddle website to include all the conferences as we continue to add more podcasts and content creators in the coming year to the College Huddle. I think we're up to 80 now, and I would love to see us get up to 100 by the time we kick off here in a little under 2 months now. So we're going to try to effort that. We got a couple more who we're talking with right now. So hopefully we'll have some recruiting booms in the College Huddle to announce and introduce everybody to. But in the meantime, go check out the Thundercast. It's one of my faves. These guys were one of the first ones to join us back before we announced anything, before there was ever a website, before there was ever a YouTube channel, before any of that. I came to these guys and they said, yeah, let's do this. Let's get on board. So I appreciate you guys' support. Appreciate you guys supporting the College Huddle. I have one last question. When I attend, not if, but when I attend a Marshall football game, and I've got my Marshall green on, this question, and it's because I want to fit in. So if I go to a Marshall game, what's the chant or hand signal or something? What do you guys do so that I would fit in as a Marshall fan, man?
Brother, it's the name of the movie for a reason. But one side says "We Are," and the other says Marshall.
And it ain't Penn State, my man.
Oh,
it ain't Penn
there
State.
it is, brother.
And it is loud. And, we have been to, I went to Ohio Stadium. I've been to Tennessee. I've been to Notre Dame. I've been to some of the big stadiums, Virginia Tech. And, they're loud. But Marshall, you go and we are loud, especially with that chant and everything. So if you're coming, no matter what side you're on, you're either going to be saying "We Are" or Marshall, and you'll know which side you're supposed to be.
You know what? I think I just made up my mind. When you guys have a Thursday night game, I'm coming.
All right.
There you go. Probably book it for next year because we've had one every year up until this year. So that's great, man. We'd love to have if you happen to ever be on the road for your home opener, or not your home opener, your week one, like Marshall's home opener is an away game for the Buckeyes. Do that one because we go all out for our home opener. I mean,
a couple
all out.
Couple of smokers brought in. We've got I can show you after the show, but our tailgating spot, if you can't throw a football and hit the scoreboard,
yeah,
I mean
then
we're
can't throw.
We're in
You're not an athlete.
we're in the closest parking spot to the stadium, the closest one, and we've got 5 of them. And this year we actually just tacked on a 6th. But we bring in a couple of smokers, and we've had fans from big teams say, "Man, this is like SEC level tailgating that you guys do."
Nice. Yeah.
That's what we do.
And you'll be able to be part of the live tailgate show, Thundercast Live, powered by
There it is,
Link.
man.
Yeah, we do a live tailgate show. I mean, we're live during the pregame while we're out there tailgating and everything, and we do a kind of like a college game day light. Only it's all about tailgating.
Only it's good.
Yeah. only it doesn't have Pat McAfee on it. You know?
KD, I kind of feel like you, every time when you pick a winner, you end up putting the Marshall mascot head on every single time, don't you, brother?
Man, I am not afraid to pick against the herd, but it takes a lot for me to get to pick against the herd.
Well, you heard it here, man. So at some point, the College Huddle will be making an appearance down there to Huntington, West Virginia, for a Marshall game. It's going to be something. It's something I've had going around in my mind. How can I really make this different? And I thought it would be awesome to take the College Huddle on the road and go to different games throughout the year and just check it out, man. A lot of these little schools, they don't have. Some of them don't even have a podcast, guys.
Right? Yeah.
And a lot of the MAC schools don't. And I thought
some of them don't have fans.
Yeah.
So I'm good. If you decide to do the College Huddle on the road, I'm gonna double down and respectfully ask that you try to do the herd when it's a home opener and you guys are on the road, because you will get I'll be able to be there, right? You'll get the full experience, and that's the one to do. If you can't do that, then bring the College Huddle on the road for a 75-week game.
75-week game is one of those that I think everyone should experience.
Yeah. If you're a college football fan, you should experience that.
Yeah.
Love it. All right, guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Let us know what you think about what we think down in the comments section below. You're a Marshall fan, you stumbled on this. Let me know. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get this thing to 1,000 before the season starts. We're doing our darndest, and these guys helped me out with that today. I appreciate that so much. Till next time, guys, we are
Marshall!
Later.